Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. And welcome to Do I Qualify for the PMP exam? This is my approach on how you can easily determine if you meet the PMP eligibility requirements. Hello, I am Cornelius Fichtner. Nice to have you with us as always. Thank you for joining me here today in this live stream. So, what are you going to learn today? Let us take a look at the learning objectives that we have here. At the end of this webinar, you will be able to name the most competent person to determine your exam qualification. You will be able to list the 5 steps that are recommended in determining if you qualify to take the PMP exam. And we are also going to take a look at the application itself. And I'm going to give you some tips about how to fill in the application on the online system from PMI. Here is our agenda. Let me quickly blow through this here. There we go. These are the topics. A quick introduction here, then qualification in regards to who is the most competent person to determine this, the 5 steps to follow. We're going to take a look at a few what-if scenarios. What if you do not qualify? And I have 3 links that I want you to remember. Those are probably the 3 most important links when it comes to the eligibility on your exam. And then, as promised, we're going to take a look at those experience descriptions on your exam. So there we go. Now, let us go into the introduction. But before we do that, let me just remind you that I am, in fact, a professional PMP trainer. And these 2 here are my 2 flagship products. On the left side, we have the PrepCast training course. It is a complete PMP exam prep course. It covers everything that you need to know to pass the PMP exam, all the knowledge that you need to know, and you will learn that watching self-study videos. And on the right is my highly rated PrepCast simulator. It includes 2,100 questions and has all the exam features. So all those 5 exam question types, multiple choice, drag and drop, point and click, all of those are in the exam simulator. So please do take a look. But now let us get going with the introduction. To get us started, let me tell you that the reason why I created this webinar is because I regularly receive emails or see forum discussions from those planning to take their PMP exam, but they aren't sure if they qualify. And here are some of the examples that I have actually seen, right? So is business analyst experience considered for the PMP exam? Or does the work experience as a Scrum Master count towards project management experience? Or can you please review my resume and tell me if I qualify? Or is it safe to assume that services provided by a PMO can be treated as a project? And then there's another one. Here we go. I have a total experience of 10.1 years, but my designation is senior software developer. Am I eligible, right? Based on this, what becomes quite quickly clear is the fact that there is a certain level of confusion, uncertainty, and definitely also frustration. I mean, you can hear it in the tone, the voice of those questions. So my intent over the coming 30, 40 minutes or so is to show you a way out of this so that you yourself can determine whether or not you qualify for the PMP exam. And that takes us to the first big topic here. And that is, let me tell you who the most important person is, or the most competent person, rather, who can truly determine if you qualify, right? And that person is, believe it or not, wait, I'm clicking, nothing happens. There we go. That person is you, because You know your projects best. You understand your experience best, and you know all the initiatives and projects that you were in charge of. Okay? And that truly makes you the most competent person to make this assessment. Not me, not your trainer, not your instructor, not PMI. You are the most competent person to determine whether or not you qualify for the PMP exam. The good news, this is really easy. If you know what steps to follow, this is a matter of 30 minutes, and I'll show you that this is actually correct later on. I have a case study with a student of mine who actually went through this. So here we go. These are the 5 easy steps that you need to go through. First, you need to know the definition of what a project manager is from the perspective of the PMP exam, obviously. Then you need to know the PMP certification requirements. What does it take to be allowed to even apply to it? Then I want you to make a list of your projects. Based on that list, I want you to download the PMP exam content outline and analyze it. And step number 5, bring it all together to determine whether or not you qualify. Now, let's take a look at each of these 5 steps one by one. Okay. And before we move on, let me just say, this is primarily focused on the PMP exam. Okay. But if you are planning to take another PMI exam, like the PMI ACP or the CAPM exam, I think the same is also true for the RMP, the risk management professional, the scheduling professional. The same steps apply. You know, it's just you have to use different things, different documents that you download for this. Okay. All right. So now then, to get us started, let me apologize, because even though I said it's 5 steps, there are actually 6 steps, because there is a step 0. And this is the step of what not to do. Okay. And it's really quite simple. There are 2 things you shouldn't do. First of all, don't contact PMI and ask PMI whether or not you qualify, unless you want a really general response. PMI will not review and tell you whether or not you qualify. They will not review your background. They will simply say that, you know, this is a question of you have to fill in your application, and once we have the application, then we can officially determine whether or not you qualify. They will not help you before that. And then also don't ask your instructor before you go through these 5 steps that are just coming. And by the time you have gone through those 5 steps, frankly, you don't need them anymore. You don't need your instructor anymore, because you'll already know. Okay, so step 1. We have to talk about what is a project manager from the perspective of PMI and the PMP exam. So let's take a look at the definition from the PMBOK guide, from the glossary. The project manager is the person assigned by the performing organization to lead the team that is responsible for achieving the project objectives. Okay, so that's what it says. A few words to focus on. The performing organization, that is the company that pays for it, right? So if you are leading an in-house project, then, you know, you have been, you work for a company, and therefore that becomes the performing organization. If you work for, say, a contractor or a consultant, then, you know, the consultancy is the performing organization. So the organization that is responsible for the project, that pays for the project, usually. Okay. Then also assigned to lead the team. Okay. So it's important that there is an official assignment, that you have been named the project manager somehow. This can be official in a charter, or this can be as simple as this message here. This is the actual message. Names have been changed here. This is the actual message that I sent internally about a year ago when a new project manager joined our team. And I said, please extend a warm welcome to Jenny Farley. Jenny is reporting directly to me, and she is leading the project to help us develop the capabilities to deliver live, virtual, online training, right? So this is a clear assignment. With this, I give her the authority as well as the responsibility on the project. And this is where I want to go next here, right? So I have just given her, with this assignment, the responsibility for achieving the project objectives, okay? So think about your being the project manager. Are you a project manager in this? Does this match what you do? Right? Many people then say, well, yeah, it does, but they don't call me a project manager, right? I match this fully. Yes, my name is in the charter. My name is internal officially. Everybody comes to me. I lead the team, but I'm not the project manager. They don't call me that. They call me something different. Not a problem. Ignore titles. If you are a project lead, a technical lead, a project supervisor, administrator, project director, team lead, doesn't matter, okay? If the definition matches of what you are responsible for, then you are a project manager. Also ignore the job roles. I'm an executive assistant. Well, have you been named project manager? Yes, I am the project manager of this thing. Perfect. You're the director. You're a librarian. You're a web designer, a bookkeeper, a human resources assistant, a sales manager. Doesn't matter what your job role is, what your job title is. The important bit is whether or not you match this. Are you the person assigned by the performing organization to lead the team that is responsible for achieving the project objectives? If you match this, you're good to go. You are a project manager. All right. With that out of the way, let's go on to step 2, because you have to know the PMP certification requirements. In the past, PMI used to have the PMP certification handbook. Everything was in that handbook, okay? And you could open that up and you would understand all the requirements in one place. Unfortunately, to my detriment, PMI has decided, now we're no longer publishing this handbook. Now they offer the PMI certifications handbook, but this is only an administrative handbook, for all their certifications. How is the process of application? How much does it cost? How do you go to how do you schedule your exam? All of that is described in there, but it is no longer as in-depth and as a central source that you can use for this. So what I've done is I've gone out and I've collected the information that you need to know here. So the basic information that you need to know, you normally can find here. I didn't even know this link worked. If you go to pmi.org/PMP, you land on the PMI's PMP certification page. All right, so this is a brand new link. I only tried this yesterday or the day before yesterday. Just thought, I wonder if this works. And believe it or not, it works. Takes you to the PMP information. And here is what you need to understand. If you have a 4-year degree on the left, then you need 36 months of leading projects, experience as leading projects, and you need 35 hours of project management training. Okay, that's if you have a 4-year degree. I didn't have a 4-year degree, by the way, when I took my PMP exam back in 2004. So I had to go to the other side, and my requirement was I had an associate's degree, or HS, that stands for high school, so a high school or an associate's degree. Then you need 60 months of experience leading projects, and you still need the 35 hours of project management training. This is a requirement. If you do not have the 36 months and the 35 hours, or the 60 months and the 35 hours, you cannot apply for the PMP exam. Your application will be denied. This is a must-have, right? This is a gate, yes or no. All right, there's nothing you can do about it, and it simply is what it is. Okay. One more thing: the 36 months and the 60 months, they must all have been accrued within the last 8 consecutive years prior to your application submission. So the 36 months that you have there, or the 60 months, must have been within the last 8 years. All right. So now that you know that, you're probably also already starting to go, oh, wait, which project and where and how many hours and how many months and all that. No. Don't do that, okay? This is very important at this point for step 2. Do not start adding up your hours yet, okay? I just want you to understand the basic requirements for now. We'll start counting later on once we get to step 5. But first, we have to go through step 3. This is an important step. Doesn't sound like much in the beginning. I want you to make a list of your projects. Okay. I want you to sit down and I want you to make a list. Okay. This could be a mental list. You could pick up a notepad, piece of paper and pen, or a electronic notepad and just start writing them down. You could also update your resume, or you could add all your projects to LinkedIn. However this works for you. Okay. The result of this step is an important step because it's a mental work experience review so that you remember, well, wait a second, what were my responsibilities on each of these projects, right? Remember, in step 1, we had the definition of what is a project manager. Right? And now as you're creating that list, you're probably going to go, oh yeah, that matches, and here, and yes, I was assigned to this. And now as you're making this list, it becomes clearer. You're starting to see how this fits together already, right? This also makes sure that all the projects are noted, right? Because if you need 60 months, right, you can't forget a project. Maybe, you end up with 50 months if you forget a project. And so this is very important. So please, even if this sounds like, oh, this is so silly, I don't want to make a list of my projects, please don't rush it. Don't skip it. Take your time. Because also later on, once you get into your application process and you apply for the PMP exam, you need to have that list. Right? And if you create it now as you are going through the do I qualify question, later on when you say, hey, I qualify, I'm now going to apply, I'm going to fill in the online application. Now you have it. And you don't have to really go searching for this information anymore. So don't rush it. Don't skip it. Okay, so that's step number 3. Now comes something that is probably going to sound surprising at first, and that is I want you to analyze the PMP exam content outline. Okay, the PMP exam content outline, that is the document in which PMI clearly describes what a project manager does and what you will be tested on during the PMP exam. Okay, well, this is what this looks like here. The exam content outline lists project management tasks. Okay, project manager tasks, project management tasks. And it does so in 3 domains: in the domain of people management, process management, as well as the business environment. And this list in here, that is what PMI says. They did a job analysis on this. These are the tasks that all people around the world, whoever they interviewed, say, yep, these are the tasks that I, as a project manager, do. Okay. And every single question on the PMP exam is mapped back to this list. So if there is something that is not inside of this exam content outline, you will not be asked about it on the PMP exam. I always have this silly example, and in the exam content outline, they do not talk about lava lamps. Therefore, on the PMP exam, you cannot be asked about lava lamps. This is a totally silly example, I know, but just to get the idea across. If it isn't in the ECO, you will not be asked about it. For example, until 2020, Agile and Agile project management was not in the ECO. So there were very, very few questions about Agile on the real PMP exam. Now the ECO says 50% of the questions will be about Agile. Therefore, 50% of the questions that you have to expect on the exam are now on Agile. But that's a side note, okay? So, but what you need to do is you need to look at the ECO and you need to ask yourself this question here. Have I performed the majority of these tasks as part of my project manager responsibilities? Because if PMI says this is what a project manager does, and this is what we're going to be testing you on during the PMP exam, then, having the experience on this is an important factor, okay? Right, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to print this document. Yes, literally have it on paper in front of you. And then I want you to take a highlighter. Actually, I want you to take 3 highlighters, a green, yellow, and red highlighter. And you already know what's coming, right? I want you to look at every single task and every single enabler on this list. And I want you to highlight in green where you can honestly say, yep, I did this. This is clear. I work on this. I do this every day or on every project. Yellow ones, I did it once or twice. Yeah, I have some experience in this. And then red, what on earth is this? I have never heard of this. I've never done this. I am clearly lacking the experience on this here. Okay. And now, as you are looking at the end result, right? If this is mostly green, yes, according to my analysis of the exam content outline and what PMI says, this is the experience I should be having. This is all green. I have the experience, right? So this is the end result of this step here. You now know, based on your comparison of who you are and what your experience is versus what's coming on the PMP exam, do I match what they want? Hey, Mary, you asked the question here. What is the ECO? Mary, we just talked about this. The ECO is the exam content outline for the PMP exam. You may have joined the presentation a little late here. So once this is recorded, you can just scroll back 2-3 minutes and you'll hear me talk about what the ECO is. Okay. So this is what you need to do. And at this point, you have a lovely 3-color document with this information in there. Oh, and just to be honest, if I did this, I am pretty sure that even though I have years and years of experience, at some areas, I'm going to have to mark red because we don't have the experience in everything, right? So this is just normal. Don't be worried if you have things that are red. That's perfectly okay. Everybody has red things. Okay. All right. Moving on to step number 5. Before we do that, Amir Bor says, I need to get certified, please. How do I start? Well, Amir, the first thing you do is you follow the 5 steps in this webinar here, in this live stream. And once you are done with the 5 steps, you know whether or not you qualify. And then you can come to our website where we have an article that talks about all the steps that you have to go through to do this. I think it's called The Complete Guide to the PMP Exam Planning. I'm not quite sure anymore what the exact title is there. Okay, so now we've gone through 4 steps, and this is the final step. Now you need to bring this all together, okay? We started out by looking at the definition of a project manager. Then we looked at the basic eligibility, 35 hours of training, 60 hours of experience, all of that. Then we created a list of all our projects, and we then printed the ECO, the exam content outline. Thank you very much, Rich, for typing that in here. Appreciate it. And welcome to the live stream. And now that we have all of this, you can now determine and come to the conclusion that, yes, I qualify. Great. I've looked at the definition. I've looked at the eligibility criteria. I meet those. My project list, I got that. ECO tasks, all of that is there. And yes, I qualify. Okay. Some of you may now think and say, wait a minute, it cannot be that easy, right? This must be more difficult. It seems like such a complex exam. How can this be so easy to determine whether or not I qualify? Well, let me give you a case study. I had a student, let's call her Olivia, right? Because that's actually her name. And I had a phone call with Olivia about this. And this was very serendipitous. She called me as I was developing this presentation and this process. So it was really perfect because I had somebody who could go and try this. Okay. And she did. I went on a phone call with her. I walked her through the steps because I didn't have this presentation finished yet. And we discussed the project management definition and the basic eligibility. And she determined, yes, I am the project manager. And also I meet the basic eligibility requirements there. And then she went off on her own and completed all the steps. And she wrote back to me saying, yep, I did all of this, took me about 30 minutes. And based on that, I would say that I qualify. Wonderful. So within half an hour, 45 minutes going through these 5 steps, you will be able to determine whether or not you qualify. Yeah. What if not? What if you come out at the end and you say, based on what I see, I don't think I qualify. Now is the time to reach out, if you already have a PMP instructor and your colleagues, and say, hey, look at this. Do you agree? Am I making a mistake here? Is this all right? Okay. And if in the end you see, yeah, you know what? I do not qualify, then you need to create and implement a plan to remove whatever the reason may be. For example, the most common reason is the fact that you don't have enough experience. You only have 20 months of experience. There is nothing you can do. If you do not have the 36 or 60 months of required experience, PMI will not approve your application. It just is what it is. Like in Switzerland, where I'm from, you have to be 18 years old to be able to get your driver's license. They're not going to give it to you if you're 15, right? You have to wait until you're 18. Same thing here with the PMP exam. If you do not have the 36 or 60 months, you have to wait until you have it. But the good news is there are other certifications that you can go for. Not going to go into these in more detail, but the CAPM, the PMI ACP, and the CSM, the Certified Scrum Master, those are all certifications that have a much lower entry level. Okay? So, for example, with the CAPM, it takes you about 21 hours of training. That's all you need. If you've had 21 hours of project management training, you can take the CAPM exam. Okay? So you can get started with those certifications and put a few letters behind your name as you are getting ready to qualify for the PMP exam. All right. But what if you say, yes, I qualify? Then you fill in your application and now PMI comes back and says, no, you do not qualify. Okay. Now, here's the good news. In most cases that I have seen, it is usually a formal issue, right? It is not a fact that you don't qualify for a real issue. It is often a formality that why PMI says you do not qualify. Let me show you what I mean by this, okay? This is quite a normal thing for PMI to do. We are unable to ascertain from the project descriptions that you have provided if you truly served in the capacity on the projects per the aforementioned role definition. I mean, they couldn't write it more complicated. Basically, they're saying, based on what you wrote on your application, we don't think you are a project manager. Okay, that's one of the statements. This is the next one. Right? Projects descriptions should be documented clearly enough to ascertain whether or not the projects documented truly are projects. Please refer to PMBOK Guide section 1.2. This basically means saying, well, we looked at your application, we saw all the projects that you did. We don't think those are projects, right? And Oftentimes, this is simply because you didn't document these projects in a way that is easily understood by PMI. I have some examples later on about how to do this better. Okay, so there you go. These are the formal rejections from PMI. Then what you can do is simply excuse me. You would. I need to go back to this one here. You would simply fix the problem and resubmit the application here. The second bullet point, right? That's what you need to do. It is a formal rejection. Fix the formal problem. Resubmit your application, and you will most likely get through. But what if? What if it is not a formal rejection? What if it is something else? Okay. Well, you want to understand the appeals procedure. There is a formal appeals procedure where PMI tells you how to appeal their decision. So know that, understand that, call PMI, ask if you can talk to the person who rejected your application on the phone. Can I speak to somebody, right? Appeal PMI's decision, right? Keep at it, submit documentation, unless you look at it and you go, yeah, you know what? They're actually right. Based on what they're writing, this is actually correct. Based on how I do not qualify. And then we're going back to, okay, I don't qualify. What do I need to do in order to qualify? This is really individual, right? It's very hard to give recommendations, but my best recommendation is stick to your guns. Stay on it, call, talk to them, send more documentation. You understand your background. And if you truly feel, no, you are wrong, get confirmations, get them to understand that what you have submitted is correct. Okay, that is always the best way forward. Just keep talking to them. All right. And that's it. That's really the whole process, the 5 steps. I told you I would give you 3 links to remember. These are the 3 most important links when it comes to PMP exam application and determining your eligibility. The first one, pmi.org/PMP. That's where you can find out about the eligibility requirements. PMPrepCast.com/PMP outline. That takes you to the exam content outline for the PMP exam. And a little less relevant is now the handbook at the bottom there, and that will take you to the PMI certifications handbook. This is more about administratively how you apply there. Okay. Let me repeat the 5 steps. Know the definition of a project manager. Know the PMP certification requirements. Make a list of your projects. And now bring everything together there. Analyze it, the PMP exam content out, and then bring everything together, of course. So analyze the PMP exam content outline, making sure that you match everything. And then once you've gone through these 4, you will already in your head see how it matches up and whether or not you qualify or not. Now, those are the 5 steps. I'm now moving on to the tips for describing your experience on the exam application. Remember, I said that in most cases when PMI rejects your application, it is often a formality. You didn't describe the projects correctly. We don't think you are a project manager. Those type of formal rejections are not uncommon. So here are a few ideas on how to avoid that. First of all, your PMP exam application must be truthful, right? Do not, for heaven's sake, copy anything that you see in this presentation and write the same type of words in your application. If you do that and PMI rejects your application, congratulations, you just played yourself, right? You have to submit your application and not the examples that I'm giving you here. This is just for illustrative purposes so that you understand how you should submit your information, right? So yeah, be honest. Don't try to cheat your way into the PMP exam. Okay, so we'll start with the description of your project management experience. So for each project, you want to describe the project objectives in 1 sentence, okay? summarize deliverables by project group, describe the project outcomes in one sentence. And in total, you have 550 characters. There we go, third time's lucky, per project. And you want to use the abbreviations IN, PL, X, MC, and CL as part of this. You'll understand in a couple of slides what we mean by that. And most importantly, describe your work, describe your responsibilities, describe what you were in charge of, not the scope of the project. PMI doesn't want to know what the project was all about. They want to know what you did. They want to be able to ascertain, was this actually a project, and were you the project manager? Those are the two things that should come out of this description, all right? Okay, and before we get to this, a few examples of using these 5 abbreviations here. PMBOK Guide 7th edition came out earlier this year. So you may be wondering, well, this initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and closing, that is still PMBOK 6. Well, yeah, for now, they are the best form of experience documentation. So for now, keep using these. My recommendation may change in the future, but right now, this still is the way that PMI expects and understands your descriptions. Here are 3 examples for you. Okay, on the right-hand side is a bad example there. I created a project kickoff document. No, don't do that. Instead, write IN. During initiation, I developed the project charter. Right? That is exactly the same, except it is a good example. The PMI will understand what you did. During the initiation, I developed the project charter. Planning, PL, I developed the work breakdown structure. Right? Instead of I wrote the product breakdown structure. Nope. You developed the work breakdown structure for the project. And then I held regular team meetings. Nope. In execution, I managed the team through the delivery. Okay. And note that I say I, but in the text, the word I is missing. Right. Well, that's, 2 characters fewer that you need. So, you want to keep it as short as possible. Here's an example of what this looks like. Okay. First, we start out with a sentence that describes the project. Design of training material for customers on telecommunications project principles. That is the overall description of the project. Objective, to research, design, and present training material in the form of presentations aimed at educating new resellers on fundamental telecom principles and standards, right? So here we now have the project description and what the objective of the project was. Role, I managed the whole project. Okay, that is clear, right? That makes you the project manager. Then in the next section, we have IN, initiating, develop the charter, PL, and so on. Yeah, you can read this on your own. What I want to point out here is this. Use verbs, right? Developed the charter, planned the scope, coordinated the execution, monitored the schedule, documented, right? So you want to use verbs that are active, that are, the tasks that a project manager works on. And then last but not least, an example, outcomes, the material was presented at a conference. Yeah. And that's pretty much it for this, right? So the goal in the end is you want to summarize your project management tasks. You want to give one line as the project title, the project description there. Then the project description, objectives, key, deliverables, value, outcome, right? You want to describe that as well. You want to do have a product description out there. What was actually delivered to the end users? Like, the materials were presented at the conference. You want also talk about the project deliverables. Remember, you are applying for a project management exam, right? So what were the project deliverables, the things that you needed to manage the project? work breakdown structure, project management plan, the schedule, the charter, you name it, the risk management plan, the risk register. All of those are important documents that you may want to mention in your description, as long as you truly worked on those, right? And it was your responsibility to create them there. All right. And then last but not least, the project manager responsibilities. What you did is there. So if you follow this approach, right, then you have a much greater chance of not running into a formal rejection from PMI, because this is the way that they currently expect it, and this is the way that many of our students, most of our students, use to get the application in and get the application approved. Remember, be truthful in all cases. All right. Yes, and that's pretty much it. We have come to the end of the presentation, but let me remind you that I am a professional PMP trainer. So if you're looking for training, then on the left is my PrepCast training course. It covers 100%, by the way, since we did talk about the exam content outline today. It covers 100% of what is inside of the ECO. So all the theoretical knowledge that you need is covered in my training. And then on the right-hand side, we have the PrepCast exam simulator, which has all the features that you need in order to prep for the exam. I think the most valuable feature in the exam simulator are the per choice explanations, right? So there's a question A, B, C, D, you select C, and then it's not right. Wouldn't it be nice if the exam simulator told you why C isn't correct? That's exactly what we do. So for, I would say, about 90% of our questions, we have these explanations for exactly why is a question or an answer incorrect. I mean, if it's a calculation, 1 and 1 is 2, right? So I'm not going to explain to you why 3 was incorrect. All right. Yeah, and that's it for today. Thank you very much for joining me today in determining how to prepare whether or not you qualify for the PMP exam. Thank you, and until next time.